Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Nick Kelso. I am a producer and director of partnerships with Francis Causey Films, and I have the pleasure of working on our project, Is Your Story Making You Sick? And we're so happy to be here in collaboration with the great folks at the film Medicating Normal. So this is a double feature screening. So if you haven't seen the films yet, you still can today. I'll even put the link in the chat. I'm sure it's been shared all over Facebook and everywhere else, but I'm putting the link in the chat now. So you can watch both of these films right now. It's a double feature event. So you can watch the PBS films, Is Your Story Making You Sick? And Medicating Normal. So we really hope you're able to watch them both. I know many already have. So before we start the Zoom, I'll just provide some quick details. So this is being recorded and it will be uploaded to the Medicating Normal YouTube channel. So that's available publicly. It's also being streamed, as we've said, to Facebook. The chat and QA will not be made public. If you have questions and you're on the Zoom, use the Q&A feature, please, not the chat, but just put your questions in the Q&A. We will not read your name aloud. And you can also remain anonymous by just clicking a box that says remain anonymous. So please use that if you'd like to. And if you're on Facebook, you can even put questions in the comments and we can see those and get to your questions too. So this panel is for general audiences. This is not, I'm just going to read this verbatim because this is our kind of disclaimer. This discussion does not constitute professional medical advice, encouragement, or recommendation that any individual reduce or withdraw from their psychiatric medicine. All views expressed are that of the speaker and not on behalf of Periscope Foundation, the Medicating Normal film team, or Francis Causey Films. Our goal here is to create a safe space for a diverse dialogue. And with that, I will read quickly the bios of our great esteemed panel here, and then we'll get started. So I'll start with you, Carla. So Carla Helbert, LPC E-RYT C-IAYT. Sorry if I'm not saying those totally, and maybe I'm saying them in a brand new way. If so, great. But so Carla is a licensed professional counselor, an internationally certified yoga therapist, a registered yoga teacher, and the award-winning author of Divine Sleep, the Yoga Nidra Guide, and a compassionate bereavement care provider certified through the MISS Foundation, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Family Trust, and the Center for Loss and Trauma. Counseling and supporting those living with traumatic grief and bereavement is her main focus of work. So thank you for being here, Carla, and thank you for the work you do. Angela Peacock, or Angie, MSW, is a U.S. Army veteran. Her story of overmedication after trauma appears in the film Medicating Normal. She's a mental health advocate, a writer, and a YouTube creator who travels in her camper van across the United States with her service dog, Writer, to improve the mental health care system for veterans and civilians alike. She can be found online at Being Human RV, all one word, Being Human RV. And we can hope Raider makes a guest appearance. We don't know.
Oh, he probably
Great. And last but not least, Dr. Mark Pirtle. Dr. Pirtle is a producer and writer, an integral therapist, retreat leader, teacher, speaker, author, and filmmaker, who is the lead clinician and producer and writer of the film Is Your Story Making You Sick? He creates content and experiences that help people heal stress-related patterns and live lives more full of beauty, goodness, and truth. So welcome, Mark. And this wasn't on my list, but I'm doing it. I'm giving a shout out to Nicole Lamberson, distribution and outreach with Medicating Normal. You're amazing, Nicole. Nicole, I was really a big part of putting this whole event together. So thank you, Nicole. You're awesome. You're great to work with. So now I'll pass the floor to each panelist so they can say a little bit more about themselves and speak to the theme of tonight's conversation. And the theme of tonight's conversation is, instead of being prescribed potentially harmful medications, what if we could heal our stories? So while the panelists are introducing themselves, the audience can go ahead and start typing questions. You can add them to the Q&A box here or leave them as comments on Facebook. And with that, I'll hand it to Carla for a little bit more.
Sure, thanks, Nick. Well, I love that theme, really. I've been on other panels and have had sit downs with Angie and Nicole both, and talked a lot about how so many clients that I see, which is, as you said, I primarily see people in traumatic grief and bereavement. Not completely, totally, but a great deal, like probably 98% of my clients I see following a traumatic death of somebody they love. And medicating grief is not helpful at all. It's not pathological. And often, we see that it can impede your growth and development in grief as you try to integrate that, as well as integrating and healing the trauma into your life. And the thing about the stories is, as people that I see, and also me, we didn't mention this in my bio, but I've been a therapist for a long time, but my life and the way I practiced and the way I saw the universe changed when my son died of a brain tumor. And so that really, it changes who you are for the rest of your life. And from there, lots of things started shifting in my learning and my growing as a person and as a therapist, and then eventually the way that I practice and my focus of my practice as well. But that the death of somebody that we love, or trauma that you've been through, is a part of your story. It's not your whole story. And, especially right after it happens, particularly deaths, it feels like that's the whole story. But, as we grow and learn, and you can see this so beautifully too in the Is Your Story Making You Sick, that community of people, as we have community, as we have support, then we can see that we can grow and become, more full human beings with this as part of our story. And that we get to be in charge of how we tell it and who hears it and all these different things. So I love that theme, and it's so much a part of the work that I do with my clients and people that I see in retreats and workshops and all over the place. So I love that I'm here and that I get to share this with all of you.
Thanks, Carla.
Thank you, Carla. I'm personally looking forward to hearing more from you on this panel already. So thank you for that. Angie, do you want to speak to this question about our stories and medicating our stories?
Yeah, I think I spoke to it in the film a little bit when I said, I was just a scared little girl at 24. I came home from war and I saw these traumatic things. And it just, the way I explain it is like, you have this one idea in your mind, like what the world, how it works, how things are normal and people are nice to each other and you have etiquette and you say hello and goodbye. I don't know. But like when you go through a traumatic experience, it kind of flips all of that on its head and you see everything differently. And it kind of makes you see like the little cracks of evil or whatever. And then you get confused because you're like, wait, I thought the world was supposed to be safe and sound and nice and, everything is happy, but it's just not that way. So when I think about that question, I think if somebody would have just told me like what you experienced was really scary and it's going to take you a long time to readjust, but we're going to be here for you, whatever you need. We're going to make sure you get extra sleep and really good food and people that care about you, that would have saved me like going on 21 years of suffering from that story being wrong. That story that I was told was, you're a psychiatric patient, you have a brain disease, you need to take medication for the rest of your life, you'll never have children, and just all these messages. And some of them are subtle and some of them are not so subtle. And just another thing I like to talk about is like every day taking a medication, 3 times a day, or loading that little pill container up and sitting in the drive-through at, the pharmacy. Like even that tells yourself a story and it reinforces like there's something wrong with me. So it's not just a benign thing that, we take medication or whatever. So yeah, do I wish I would have told told myself a different story and other people would have told me a different story, yes. I think it would have changed the course of my life probably, and I'd be in a much different place for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angie. And Mark, could you speak to this question, this theme of our conversation? Instead of being prescribed potentially harmful medications, what if we could heal our stories?
Well, I think that life is hard, and I love the title, Medicating Normal, because it's almost like the pain in our lives has become in some way unacceptable, and what we're teaching ourselves is that pain is abnormal, and that also the secondary message is that we're distress intolerant. We're not going to be able to handle it. And I've had my share of losses and grief and pain as well. And the greatest medicine that I've ever had in my life, ever, is another person. Another person. People are medicine. Love is medicine. A hug is medicine. Someone listening to you is medicine. Compassion is medicine. Empathy is medicine. And if we understood this simple thing that we all know intuitively, but our medical system, the system itself, is organized around fixing disease, and it seems like everything gets the label. And I mean, what constitutes a disease? I can see that cancer is a disease. I understand that cancer is a disease. It's something that cancer is a noun. You can find it. You can take it out, and it's operating. But can you find PTSD anywhere? It's not a disease. It's a noun. I mean, it's a verb.
Mm-hmm.
It's an inaction that happens as a result of an experience that leaves traces in the mind-body network, information and energy in the mind-body network. And then the carrier of those traces is then triggered again, and that activation, that verb, enacts itself. And if there's no lesson, if there's no anyone teaching the person that's carrying this enacted verb how to, first of all, understand that it's a system dynamic, it's contextual, it's story-based, there's imagery, there's both sound-based thought and picture-based thought, and you can see these things, and I'll say see, and I'll say hear. You can be the observer of those instead of the thinker of those. You can watch it enact itself through meditation and mindfulness, and then all of a sudden you have a different perspective, and then the thing that you think you have, PTSD, you realize that you like it doesn't have you anymore. You have it. Oh, this thing that is enacting, and now you're in a position to do something about it. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to take your pain away, because healing like this, like, it's the hard way. It's really the hard way, because you have to feel, and you have to go through and process and re-script another story and live and survive and become something greater as a result of what you've experienced. And then the narrative changes, and then of course the brain and the biochemistry changes as a result. I'm talking a lot, but thanks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. Carla, Angie, did either of you two want to kind of comment on how Mark was just speaking about this kind of interplay?
Yeah, you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, he said so much good stuff. Oh my gosh. That was the part of Is Your Story Making You Sick that touched me the most. You know, everybody, when they watch a film, they watch from their own perspective, and like they're drawn to things that they like the most. But I was mostly drawn to the part where one of the female therapists was teaching people how to listen. And then she said, you know, if you start to talk, while you're hearing the other person's story, you know, ask yourself, why am I talking? And I was thinking, we need that in schools. Like, we need that as a skill just to learn how to be with each other, you know? But then later in the film, when everybody comes back and circles around and the African-American guy is crying because everyone's reflecting back to him what they saw in him, and that you're just a strong, I think was it you, Dr. Pirtle, that was telling him that? Yeah. That was telling him, you know, that you didn't, all the trauma you've been through, you could have been violent and you chose not to. And you're a beautiful person and you're passing on your legacy. And I was bawling watching that part because I just thought, like, to me, that is therapy. That's the way I heal now, is I go to support groups for veterans, and I don't get to do that in person very much. But when I'm around fellow veterans, it's like I don't have to say anything. I don't need to explain myself. I don't need to tell them a story. You can see it in between, you know, just looking at each other, you know, where we've been. The same, this is really unfortunate and sad, but the same goes for the psychiatric drug withdrawal community, the people that have come off meds. It's such a isolating experience. Doctors don't believe us, our family doesn't believe us, so we seek each other out. And so in my van life, I've got to visit many of them. And that is where the healing comes from for them and for me, because it's like, we've been there. And so, no offense to either Dr. Pirtle or Carla, but it's like this professionalization of help, that you have to go to a professional and you need to, you know, go once a week for 1 hour. I hate it. The model is terrible, because we need to build that community support again and teach people important skills like listening and reflecting back and not saying a word and not trying to fix each other or tell us to go to a professional, because that's even more isolating when you're like, oh, you're suicidal, go call the 1-800 number. Okay, thanks. Like, that really feels good. That's what I need right now, you know? So I just enjoyed everything you said.
Mm-hmm. I'm not offended, Angie. Because, I mean, I'll tell you, you know, when my son died, what you're saying about, you know, the veterans groups and the psychiatric community, the injury from psychiatric drugs, bereaved parents and lots of bereaved people, the same way. It's like, this is true. The place where I feel 100% able to authentically be just who I am is with other bereaved parents. Like, I don't have to worry, am I going to upset somebody if I talk about my dead son? I can say something that's like painful and heart-wrenching, and then the next minute be laughing with them about something and nobody thinks it's weird. You know, so it's like, I totally get that. And I'll tell you, right after he died, I'm a therapist, and I had therapist friends be like, do you think you should see a therapist? And this is, okay, I want to make sure this is understood. I'm not saying that you have to have had a child die to help somebody who has had a child die. You don't. I know lots of people at this point in my life who are incredible supports and helpers and counselors for bereaved parents who have not had that experience. However, I just felt, if I can't talk to somebody who knows what this is like, and being a therapist, I know how it goes. If somebody tells me something about closure or stages, or tells me to get over my feelings, or I need to move on, I will be furious. And I knew that wouldn't help me. And so I was afraid to go to a therapist. And so I was lucky enough to have the Miss Foundation. And there was already a support group here. And that's what I did. I went to support groups. I didn't miss one for 3 years. And then they asked me to start leading them. And I didn't want to, because I was like, I won't have a space. But I tell a lot of my clients, whenever I'm teaching, if I have a retreat happening or there's a workshop that's longer than your 1 hour session, and a lot of times, especially with traumatically bereaved people, I make sure I have extra space because it goes over an hour. And I say, look, if it's about, you know, money, just don't come to me for a few weeks, or we'll like get a sliding scale so you can come to this other thing, you know, try to figure out how, because you'll get so much more out of the community of people. Not that you don't get something from me. I'm not saying that. I mean, I think I'm pretty good at what I do, but also you get so much more when you're in a community of people and you have that reflection, you have that support of other people who can understand what you've been through, and also, you know, hear your story. So I totally hear what you're saying. Yes, the model is terrible. I'm just you know how I feel about it. I don't, it's not, the disease model is not helpful. This whole idea that you're disordered, and it's just, I do a lot of education with my clients so that they can understand what's happening in the brain and what a stress response is and what's going on with their nervous system, and how, and also, as Mark said, mindfulness and meditation. I teach these things to my clients all the time because it's so helpful. One, as he said, to be able to not identify as I am that. I am depressed. I am overwhelmed by my grief. I am traumatized. I have this disorder. It's instead, you can observe it and know that this is part of what's happening, and that you can witness what's going on. And it's not that it's easy, because it takes a lot of practice and time, but we know when you learn how to focus your attention in certain ways, you can start to rewire your brain. You can literally change the limbic system and shrink those parts of the brain that fire off. So, you know, when you're cued to have a trauma response, and then the other parts of your brain that are approach behaviors and connecting behaviors, those start to get more and more dense, and you literally have strength there and resources that you didn't have before. But it's a practice, and it takes time and effort. And it is, like Mark said, it's hard because you got to feel that stuff to get through it. But it's worth it. It allows expansion in your life, because what I've seen with people who don't want to pursue that out of fear and continued avoidance, what happens is your life gets smaller and smaller and more constricted, and that's not good for anybody, you know. So
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Carla. You know, you and Mark are kindred spirits. Like, I have not heard that put so well since the last time Mark did one of the presentations around the film. It's like some of the things you're saying are so aligned, and you were speaking about how this is a practice. And I want to tie in a question that came in and then shoot this to you, Mark, because I want to talk about how this is a practice and how folks can practice this, or what can they do. And the question, Mark, is, you know, one we get a lot with the film is there a retreat like this? What I saw in Is Your Story Making You Sick in my community? I'm in Michigan. So, you know, how can, I think more broadly, what we try to do with these questions is, okay, how can someone anywhere, no matter where they are, because a retreat like Is Your Story Making You Sick, you know, full disclosure, this was, you know, a year of program, you know what I mean? And many retreats. So, Mark, do you want to speak to that and speak to some of the practices and how this person here from Michigan can start, or what they could do?
Well, you know, I'm not familiar with all the opportunities, especially places far from here. You know, we're doing retreats at Canyon Ranch, where we where we filmed the movie. That's ongoing. I'm hosting a men's retreat in a different ranch in southern Arizona this weekend. So retreats are happening, and this is where I think where Angie and where Carla and I like our different ways of sort of blending the medicine, not in the therapist's office, but if you can get professionals and folks who are hurting in a retreat environment where there isn't a hierarchy, there's just loving people coming together, because that's what we created when we did the film. There was some teaching that went on, but we tried not to create a power differential between us and the folks. We sat in a circle, and everybody's contribution was honored, and nobody was grandstanding or anything like that. But retreats do happen, and they happen all over the country. I just think Angie and Carla would agree that, you know, getting folks together for an extended period of time, because there's a period of time that people need to marinate with each other. You first get together and everybody's just finding their legs, trying to get to know each other. And the first couple of days is just, you know, just energetically landing. And then all of a sudden, there's stories are shared, and hearts are opened, and the next thing you know, connections are made, and things go deep pretty fast. And with all of that compassionate sharing and caring, and witnessing, then in a span of 4-7 days, you can go back a different person. And then it's also just a start, and then integrate, go back into your life, feel what you need to feel, integrate what you need to integrate. There's no finish line ever, and just retreat again at some point, and retreat again at some point. And I think if we had this model of retreats over many years, I think we could get a handle on all the depression and the anxiety and the PTSD and all of the trauma that's being that is emerging out of our sick system and being perpetuated by hurt people who are living in the system that are hurting each other. We're not as kind to each other as we need to be, and that's part of the pathology.
Absolutely. And while we keep speaking, thanks for that, Mark. I might ask you or Carla or someone to maybe type an answer to share to the person who asked the question. They're asking for, what are some search terms? How do I start? And then feel free. Maybe this is a good move for maybe Carla. Can you share, like, if I'm in Michigan, like, where do I even start to do this? Because as we know, right, most of us grow up in a system that doesn't really prioritize this type of healing, right? We had a comment on Facebook that says, all these things you're talking about are medicine, but they don't make anyone money, and that's where the system fails, right? And so how do I start? I think it's a great question. And what might I specifically even search for in my community?
Well, I think, and again, I also don't know what's available in Michigan, but, I have had, before the pandemic, for the 7 years before that, I, along with my really good friend and dear colleague, Joanne Cacciatore, we were doing retreats in Sedona every year called the Selah Retreat. And also now they have a respite house there on the Care Farm in Sedona. But when I would go there, we would have people come from all over the place. And like Mark said, we would also have people who would come back multiple times, and you could see that growth and development. So you may not find something in Michigan, and you may feel like you may need to travel somewhere to get there, and that's not always feasible for everybody. But just where you would start looking, and again, I don't know with Cheryl, like what kind of retreat she's looking for, but thinking about, is it something for mental health? Is it something for grief? Is it specific to trauma? And just Googling retreat for support for trauma, or whatever it is, and then looking to see what shows up. And you could even put near Michigan potentially, and you might find multiple different types, and start kind of keeping track of what you're finding, seeing what's close to you, then sort of researching who are the people who are running it, what are their credentials, what else do they do, so you can learn a little more about them. I mean, that's what I would do. That's where I would start. Because like Mark said, there are lots of different kinds of retreats that are focused on various types of healing and growth and development. And so depending on what specifically you're looking for, that's where I would start, and to see, or if there's specific teachers or professionals that you enjoy, or you follow their teachings, looking to see, do they have any retreats or workshops or even teachings happening or trainings, because sometimes it's not the same as a retreat at all. It's very different, but you still could potentially learn something to help yourself in that way. So that's kind of where I would start. Angie, what do you think?
Me, I've turned into quite a nerd when it comes to like podcasts and
yes,
free resources. So I listen I'm a huge fan of Andrew Huberman, his
Yeah, he's
YouTube
great.
videos all on neuroscience. Oh my God, I have learned so much and done things for myself. Now I know that's like a solitary activity. So I'm just saying that I think kind of what they're asking is like, how do I start the healing journey? So that could consist of in group, in person, with other people, or finding what's true for you. So because I can't use, psychiatric drugs, meds anymore, I had to find other things. So podcasts are free. They're all over YouTube. I listen to so many good stuff, good things. There's lots of audiobooks that are free. I would definitely recommend like the self-compassion stuff by Kristen Neff. There's a couple others like positive psychology kind of rubs me the wrong way, but there is some good stuff in there. And then I was going to say meetup.com. In the age of pandemic, there's so much stuff on Zoom that you don't feel like super close to someone because you're not in person, but it is a bridge like in between, I would say.
Yeah.
So I would say seek out like meetup.com and just like Zoom offerings. But what you said the most, like when you read a book and you really like it and you dig that teacher or that person, find their touring schedule. Usually it's on their website and it says like appearances or, sign up for a Zoom thing here. So you have access to all these now, maybe more than you did in person, because you can afford $1,000 yoga retreat. I can't,
But the thing you said about the Zoom stuff, I just did a day-long workshop this past Sunday, and there were people there from Ireland, there were people there from California, there were people there from Mexico, there were people there from all over this country. It really opens up the possibilities. It's not the same as being in person, like at a retreat center or something. There is something really magical about being with people in a space where, for this period of time, you don't have to be anywhere else. You don't have to go anywhere else. You're going to get good food, like you said, eat good food and have space and time and nature. That's often a big part of it. So it's true, that's not the same, but it is a good place to start for sure.
And can I say another thing about retreats? Sometimes traveling is healing as well. During a period of my life, I traveled to Australia and I spent a couple of months in a Tibetan Buddhist monastery, and it was utterly transformational because it was so far away. I was out of my my environment. I was on the southern hemisphere, upside down and backwards, and that really did make a difference. And I find also that when I have traveled for meditation retreats or things, that just going somewhere else and getting out of your comfort zone, being in a different environment, it can be an ingredient in the healing process. And so if anyone who's listening is considering a retreat, you don't have to do anything close to you. If you have the time and the resources, travel across the country, really get into some place. If you live in the desert, go to the mountains. If you live in the mountains, go to the desert or the ocean. Do something different. Put your body somewhere different in the world.
And I gotta say something about that before you pass on. The gift that I did not recognize in moving into a van and traveling across the United States was that I actually enjoyed meeting strangers for the very fact that they had no idea who I was. They didn't know my story. They didn't know, in my city, everybody thinks they know who I am. And, they have me pegged because they know of my history. But when you go out in the world and you meet people and they are kind to you, it like restores your faith in humanity, and then they don't judge you because they think they know you. It's like, I'm a stranger among and they don't need to know anything. And I can just say hello and shake their hand and walk by. And that has been healing for me, to not have a story attached to my body in my own city.
It gives you the opportunity to write a new story because it's like you are a clean slate. So I agree with you, Angie.
Love it.
You can really clean the slate and begin a new story by being somewhere different where no one knows you. You can reinvent yourself.
Nick knows because Nick's been on van life also.
I'm always a little jealous when I see you in that RV because, I definitely have loved some van times too. Yeah. And it's fun to be in a van going different places. And then when you're in a van going different places, what's fun is being in one place for a long time too, and getting that, and that puts you in a different headspace. You know what I mean? So it's both. So yeah, this is great. We do have a comment from the Facebook community, so I wanted to bring this up for everyone, and I think it's a great question. So they write, what about people who are prescribed benzos, and during tapering, the withdrawal is often terrifying and debilitating because there is real physical damage to the GABA receptors. They are downregulated and glutamate is increased, causing severe flight, fight, freeze. This is not a story, is it? It's physical damage that has caused constant fight or flight. How to heal, a question, how to heal physical damage by telling a different story. Would love to hear thoughts. Carla, do you want to start?
Well, I was wondering if that person has watched Medicating Normal. If not, you should, because there's a whole section. Well, Shalimar on Medicating Normal was withdrawing from benzos after like 6 years of using those pills and having been told totally wrong things by the doctor that prescribed them. And, you know, one of the things that she's doing, I think it's really important to find a prescriber who's going to work with you on helping you to have a really slow taper. And I'm not a doctor, but I mean, I tell clients this all the time. Yeah, somebody says benzo withdrawal is trauma in itself. Yes. And for some people, it can be so much worse than for other people. And finding that support, I think, is really helpful. Like Angie was saying, the psychiatric injured from psychiatric drugs community, like there's support groups out there and community out there so that you can have somebody who you're not going to feel like they think I'm crazy, or, you know, they think I'm making this up or any of that, because they know it's true. But finding a doctor or prescriber who's going to help you as much as possible have the right kind of titration and tapering. So in the movie, you can see Shalimar like taking the pill and like crushing it, and then measuring out like a tiny bit at a time. So she has a really like very slow taper, and she still has trouble, and it is terrible and it's terrifying. That's true. So that's what I would say. Mark, do you have or Angie, what do y'all think?
Well, I'm not a physician and I don't really know much about medicine, but I do recognize the energy around certain words. And when we use the words physical damage, that's gonna energize and make our nervous system nervous. Now, there are physical effects of these drugs, but more often than not, the physical effects it's can diminish over time with tapering, and so it's not necessarily damage. It's more like what's a better word than damage? Changed. You know, you've been chemically changed, and it's going to require a little bit of smarts and professional help to undo the change and to reestablish a healthy normal. But I don't think there's going to be a lasting damage. And so just my wish is for people to be really careful about the language that they use, because they can heighten the nervousness of their nervous system, and in a way perpetuate and potentially upregulate the withdrawal effects if you're under stress as a result of our thinking, because we can't untangle any part of the system. So the chemicals and the brain and the story that's running, it's transcendent, but it's running over the brain, and we don't know how the story and the brain connect, but they do. And so if your story is scaring you, you're going to light up your limbic system. And if you're coming off of benzos at the same time you're scaring yourself, you're going that likely the the process isn't going to feel as good as if the story you were telling yourself about that experience were different. And it's still probably not going to be pleasant. Okay, I'm just right. I'm not discounting in any way the pain that the person who asked that question is going through, because the pain is real. But we have to be really careful not to make the pain worse. And that's the simple thing to do. We can't erase the pain, but we can really make it worse if we're not careful. The best we can do is put a box around it. No higher intensity, no longer duration. That's the best we can do. And it really does take some skillful awareness, oftentimes in support with other people, where the medicine is other people and the support of other people to help us, to help. They're like our surrogate frontal lobe. They help regulate us. Other people do help regulate us.
Very true. I think because I've been through, oh my God, the car's about to hit my van. Sorry. Okay. Oh my God, don't hit the van. Come on. Okay, sorry. Oh my God. Sorry. That was really scary. Okay. So just like that, the car hitting the van, the physical change that you experience. Okay. What I can say from my experience is there's this physical change happening, but then there's a story that I would put on top of it. So for example, oh my God, my heart is racing. All my muscles are tight. I can't think straight. I'm having suicidal thoughts. That means I'm going to be like this forever. Or that means I'm going to die. That extra layer, I know it's hard to control, especially like Dr. Pirtle said, your frontal lobe goes offline and you're in this panic universe and you have no control over it. Your body, your change or your damage or your nervous system has changed so much that it's abrupt and it's terrifying. And it's like a level of suffering I did not even know existed. And it's hard for people that have not been through it to conceptualize how deep the suffering truly is. So I think we would never discount the suffering, because I'm still in it to some extent. I just went to a vision doctor this morning because my vision is like permanently changed after 6 years being off. But the story on top of that, like I am able to control it a little bit more now with a lot of practice, but that is also neuroplasticity. When you tell yourself a different story, like, okay, my vision is just bad today. Yes, I'm 6 years off, but I'm not going to think about it like, oh, I've been like this for 6 years and I'm going to be like this for 6 years more. That's that extra layer of story that we don't need. My story now is I'm doing everything I can to heal. My body is a beautiful organ that is capable of healing that I don't even understand. I'm around supportive people that nurture that healing. I choose not to involve myself in relationships that maybe harm my healing. So that's like that extra layer that I have all these symptoms and that means this. Try to not do that. But then I want to say one more thing. There's also another layer, a little bit on top of that. Like I was a psychiatric patient and now I'm a harmed psychiatric patient. And now I'm like, psychiatry damaged me and they victimized me. There's all these other stories that we tell ourselves on top of that. And for a time that's helpful. Like I want to feel like a victim because I was, but I don't want to live. What kind of life would that be, to be angry at psychiatry for the rest of my life? I don't want to live in that. So it's like, what else can I be now? Who am I going to be now? And who am I going to be in the future? And I don't want to be a dysfunctional veteran. That's another story I could tell myself. Or a single female who's like, doesn't have family or missed her childbearing years. Like there's all these stories I could tell myself. And I have to cut myself off, and I do sometimes, but I think that's what they would mean when it relates to psychiatric drug withdrawal.
Wow. Thanks for that, Angie. It's really inspiring to hear you put that in words, and brave for you to share your story. So thank you. This might be a good question for you because you're so involved in the film, but others, Carla, Mark, we had a question come in. Can something be done to shut these prescribers down? Is something being done? Do you think there's a change happening?
You want me to answer that? I don't know. I gave up on systems change. I'm all about the grassroots change. Like all the people in the audience that are listening right now, all the people that see the film, I'm not, like I said in the film, I'm not anti-medication. I'm pro-informed consent. So it's like, I'm sharing my story. I hope nobody else has to go through it. I know that I'm like a severe case and not everybody experiences kind of what I did, but I'm all about like education or educating one person at a time and helping that person find their own resources and their own method of healing without being just, you know, sold a narrative, because that's kind of what the status quo is it's like once you're identified, the identified patient is what they call it, the IP, then you have this system of treatment that you need to take. And if you don't and you resist, then you're non-compliant. You know, there's all these stories that, so I'm all about just helping people and let them go on that journey by themselves.
Carla, do you want to speak to that? Kind of a
That,
big topic.
that was a really good answer, Angie. I can and often do feel very cynical about the big pharma, and just like it can be really kind of overwhelming. As to that question, I don't think there's anything being done. You know, I know that there's I can't think of the name of the committee in Congress right now, but there is a committee that tries to have some oversight, but it's just so fraught with so much. I don't see anything happening in the pharmaceutical industry. So I think with Angie, the grassroots, what I try to do, and it's funny because that was where you and I really like first kind of connected on, because I said the same thing. I was like, I don't really like to say I'm anti-medicine. I am really, truly, really true pro-informed, really, truly informed consent. Do you really know? And most clients of mine, I mean, they come just like, again, in Medicating Normal, in Rebecca's story, where her parents are saying that the therapist and prescriber is like, oh, and by the way, you might have some suicidal thinking, you know, lock up your knives, like it's a joke or something. And it's serious, you know, and so some of my colleagues have said, you scare your clients. I'm like, you know, it's scary stuff. Like, it's very scary. They need to know, and we need to have some kind of plan. If you're going to choose to be on antidepressants or neuroleptics or benzos or whatever, we need a plan in case something goes wrong. And what do we do? Because it is very scary. But so trying to share the information and giving people tools that they can really use to help them, and letting them know the information, like, for example, antidepressants are, if they're about as effective as placebo, and there's research to show this. And I have plenty of books that I share with clients to say, read this, read this, read this. So, you know, there's other resources, the work of lots of people out there who are doing the work, who are psychiatrists and who are doing the right thing. Their stuff is out there, you know, Gabor Mate and Joanna Moncrief and lots of people. And so I share this information with my clients so they will be informed and they can make the best decision, and also have other tools that can help them move through it. And again, like you said, never come off your medicine just abruptly like that. It can be incredibly dangerous. Finding a good prescriber who will work with you to help you come off of it in the healthiest and safest way possible. That's just why I don't even try to like think that there's going to be something done about the pharmaceutical industry. So like that other commenter said, you know, all those other things don't make money, and that's all they care about, big pharma and the whole industry. So, you know, don't get just, that'll be all I say for now. Unless anybody else wants to say anything.
Mark, do you want to talk about this? I mean, I would say, you know, like what Angie said, y'all are doing something with your films,
That's what
with
the
the work
films
you're
are for.
doing. The
Exactly.
film, is your story making you sick? Goal of destigmatizing this. So like, I think there is something happening. As Angie said, it's as it is. It's grassroots.
Yeah.
It's information being pumped into the system. It's educating, because that's ultimately what's going to change the system, is when people become educated. If they're not educated, they'll believe whatever their doctor says, and their doctor, who at some point, you know, went into medicine because they wanted to do great work, and they're all, I mean, they're all good people. It's just the system that they get into
Yeah.
focuses primarily on how to treat disease with medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what they learn, and they come out, and it's medicines and procedures.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about love and compassion,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And so I think we both made these films to start this conversation right here.
Mm-hmm.
This is the change that we want, because we can't expect pharmaceutical industry to do anything but what it's been doing forever.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm very cynical about that. That's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Can we talk, Dr. Mark, can we talk about stigma really quick? Because every time I hear it, I just feel like nails on a chalkboard, only because I feel like that is a way to say you have problems that you need help for. But I understand the spirit in what you're saying it, as in, or in your film. What?
I used the word stigma.
No, I think Nick did, about destigmatizing.
Oh yeah. I think we're trying to depathologize.
There we go. Okay. I like that better, because I just always think
Yeah.
like when we say stigma, but if I think of your film underneath that, it's just more of a meaning like it should be okay to talk to each other and talk about our problems.
Yeah,
And
it's all
not
about being transparent and opening up. One open heart and another open heart connecting. That's how it happens. That healing happens when you connect with other people. I mean, the book that it's coming out soon. It's same title of the movie, Is Your Story Making You Sick? It's all about the one thing we can do that's going to change everything, and that is attunement. Sensing into ourselves, others, and situations with acceptance and care and a wish for a higher good. If we always had that motivation in mind every time we did anything, this world would be a better place, and it doesn't cost any money, and things would be better. And there is a moral, what we think, say, and do is morally consequential, and how we feel inside is a direct result of how in alignment with our values and our morals we are. We have to do good to feel good. And if we're out of alignment with that, there are going to be spiritual, psychological, and physical effects, negative effects.
Mm-hmm.
Attunement. I love that.
Yes. And that's 100% right. I mean, that's what I teach too. When I get the opportunity to teach other clinicians and therapists about how to be with people in traumatic grief, that's part of it, attuning with the other, and being, in an egalitarian relationship, and sharing and letting that person, teach you about where they are. Like you're saying, there's not a hierarchy. Really listening with that open heart. I mean, that is how you do it. And you're right, Mark. I mean, if we all acted that way, it would be a very different place. And it can be difficult when somebody has a hard story because it's uncomfortable. So that, like, learning how to be with your own discomfort in the face of somebody else's pain is really crucial. But it can be done. It can be done. And then that's where that exchange then happens. And people feel seen, and they feel heard, and they feel felt. And then that's what happens. Then that's when what needs to be healed can start to be healed.
Yeah. I think the two most healing things that have happened to me in the recent years, where I met up with two of the soldiers that I served with in Iraq. So I hadn't seen them for 20 years, but it was like the one was a female in Arizona, and we just went into her room and we closed the door, and she started crying and I started crying, and it just all came out. And then the second time was somebody on the phone, and he just said, "Angie, we knew you were sick." And I was like, "You guys knew?" Because like I thought all these years that they all just thought I was faking it, or I just wanted to leave. But like you saw in the film, you can see the pictures, I was just extremely emaciated and like on the verge of death. But all these years I've held that story that like my unit thinks I was full of it, or I was faking it, or, nobody ever reached out to me, so they just must not like me. These are all these stories that I was telling myself. And then when he said, "No, we knew that you were really sick and we were all scared," then I just think like, what would post-traumatic stress be like if we had time to process all this stuff? Like, You don't just get sent home and like go get on with your life. Here's your disability check, you know, just go to the psychiatrist, you'll be fine. That, I mean, those two things, I had to travel to see her, but like, and I want to see another one in Colorado because she was like my right hand chick, but like that's the kind of healing I need. And that is all about like presence, attunement, listening, being in the present moment, and that's it. That doesn't, I don't need a degree to do that, but it's just like we don't learn how to do that, you know.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, we just have 2 minutes left, and we wanted to give the three of you, I mean, I think all three of you just had like what I would call like mic drop moments where I was like, okay, we need to just end right there. Like that was perfect, you know? But I just wanted to pass the mic to the three of you and allow you a moment, and it's okay if we go a couple minutes over the hour, to share any closing thoughts and also mention work you're doing, ways to find you, ways to continue being a part of this conversation with you specifically. So, Carla, do you want to start?
Oh gosh, you know, I'm thankful to have been part of this. And as I said earlier, I really love, you know, all the work, and I'm so happy every time I get to hang out with Angie and Nicole, and glad to have met Mark and you, Nick. I just, you know, my work right now, since pandemic, I haven't been doing a lot of traveling or going anywhere. I've been doing workshops and things online. I have a book called Yoga for Grief and Loss, which is really helpful for people if you're into yoga, but helping you figure out how to work with your grief and trauma through those ways. And another called The Chakras in Grief and Trauma, about the energy body, and a little more, it sort of expands on the Tantra yoga chapter that's in the Yoga for Grief and Loss book. And both of those books are really full of lots of mindfulness and meditations and journaling activities and arts activities and things that can really help you grow. And those are the things that I tend to do my workshops and retreats around. My website is just carlahelbert.com. You can sign up for my newsletter, and anything I'm doing, I send out in that. And also, you know, you can just email me through there too. And the little contact form comes directly to me. So if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about or any of my work, I'm happy to answer that. And always loving to have these kind of opportunities to do that grassroots work, because I really do think that's where the change is coming. And I do think there is some change coming because of that. So I'm happy to be part of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carla.
And looking forward to, I'm going to get your book, Mark. That's awesome. I can't wait to get that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I can't wait till it's out. What a labor of love. My goodness.
Yeah, tell us about it, Mark. You want to go ahead?
That was quite a thing. What'd you say, Nick?
I said, tell us about it. Yeah, tell us, what you're up to, where to find you, and any closing thoughts on this discussion.
Thanks. Thank you. So the easiest way to find me is through my website. It's either Dr. Mark Pirtle, drmarkpirtle.com. And my last name is spelled Pirtle, drmarkpirtle.com, or skillfullyaware.com. Take you to the same place. And I have an online class that I've been improving for 15 years that formed the basis for the retreats that we did in the movie. And if you want a 12-week education on how to dive deep, you can take that class. Another class is starting the beginning of January, first week of January. I have guided meditations that will help you really understand how to look inside of yourself and step outside of your story and understand the parts of yourself. So that the meditations are designed from a systems perspective. I do one-on-one sessions with people, and you can find out about that, and you can do a discovery call with me if you'd like to do a session with me. There's that. And the book, Is Your Story Making You Sick, will be coming out either January or February. And I'm going to be doing a pre-sale of that book soon on my website. I'm a one-man show right now, so I've got a lot on my plate. Sometimes I'm a little slower on things than I should be, but yeah, I'm easy to find. Just Google my name. I'll be the first person that pops up.
Right. Thanks, Mark. I'm going to post a link to the film too here in case folks want to learn more about the film. I'm sure there's one. I'll post another link to the double feature so folks can see that there. And then I'll pass it to you, Angie.
Hello. Let me think. I would just say follow us on Medicating Normal. We're still actively screening with communities. So if you know a community that would like to screen with us, please email us at medicatingnormal@gmail.com. Our website is medicatingnormal.com with a reading list, research to read, alternatives, wonderful people like Carla. She's on our website as a resource, resources for harm reduction and psychiatric drug withdrawal. Everything is there. We are always asking for donations. So if that is on your heart to do so, that can also be done at our website. And then me personally, outside of the film, I'm just traveling. So all of my stuff is on Being Human RV. I do want to write a book one of these days. I'm just not there yet. I feel like it's still writing itself. So I'll be there one of these days. But in the meantime, that's where you can find me, all over the Medicating Normal pages and Being Human RV on Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome.
We'll be looking out for your book, Angie. I'd love to read it. And all three of you, thank you so much. It was a brilliant conversation. Angie Peacock, Carla Helpert, Dr. Mark Pirtle, thank you. And I'm going to put my email here just in case anyone wants to learn more about the work we do with the film or Francis Causey Films. And with that, just offer gratitude. And on another shout out to Nicole Lamberson for putting all this together. So thank you, Nicole. Thank you to the Medicating Normal team. We deeply, deeply appreciate y'all and look forward to doing more of these.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, Dr. Pirtle. Thank you
Thank
both. And
all.
Carla,
I really
thank you all.
appreciate you.
Thank
What a
you.
blessing to meet you all.
You too. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
All righty.
Good night.
Bye now.
Good night.